go.
Plastic.
Climate.
Future. Oh
Future.com.
yeah.
Boom.
Oh,
We did it again. We did it
and
again,
our
Matt. That's like
that.
80 something times. And I see that Carl is still here. That means that his headphones are not working or he has a lot of patience. So,
You wish you just would have to watch the video, which doesn't exist, but I have a big smile.
oh, excellent. All right. Well, welcome to you. Welcome
Thank
to
you guys.
Plastic.Climate.Future.
Yeah, thanks, Carl, for being with us tonight. As I said, it's a special night because it's Monday. We usually record on other days, but let's make it a special night because of your special background, and we're super happy to have you. But maybe first, Carl, where are you tuning in from? And tell us a bit about who are you? Who is Carl actually?
Well, that's a really, really lengthy question to elaborate, I would say. No, I'm
You get
Carl.
2 minutes.
Yes, that's what I thought. Damn again. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm tuning in from Hamburg, beautiful Hamburg, northern part of Germany. And just briefly about myself, I mean, it took about 27-ish year, 28 year to actually arrive in Hamburg. 24 years ago. So I'm originally Swiss born, raised, studied in the United States, actually industrial design, product development, and then moved eventually back to Europe, ended up for the love of my life in beautiful Hamburg. So this is where you get me.
Oh, wow. You studied in the US. Where did you
I
study?
did study at Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, in most amazing California.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow. Oh,
yeah,
that's neat.
that was quite an experience back in the 90s.
Back in the 90s. Wow, that's cool. That's cool.
And I know we'll get to this because your background is very fascinating. A couple of different disciplines. I just give you a bit of a hint. So it's industrial engineering, but we might end up in circularity and even philosophy. Um, was this inspired by your time in California, or tell us more?
Well,
How did this influence actually also the fact that we're going to talk about sustainability today, knowing of course that California is also very famous for their advances in sustainability.
well, there's a reason why they have the advances in sustainability, because back in the 90s, just a matter of fact, most kids, I think it was more than 30%. I mean, that's not most, but 30%, a third of the kids had asthmatic and other health issues with their lungs because
Mhm.
of the car pollution and industry pollution we had in Southern California back then. So, the smog
Mhm.
everywhere. So, but that was obviously not the point. I have to tell you, if I look, if we pinpoint the topic of sustainability along my lifeline, it is a reoccurring theme, I would say. Again,
Mhm.
starting being brought up in Switzerland, I mean, Switzerland, I remember whenever we crossed the border to Italy for summer vacation, right? You literally, the minute we crossed the border, the second we crossed it, you could see from going from clean Switzerland to sorry for folks in Italy, right? Tuning in back then in the 70s and 80s. Suddenly you had all the trash along the highway. And also the smell immediately changed, right? Weird stuff. I still remember that. So, going back to that, but then eventually if I look at my education in Switzerland, if I look then at also starting to study industrial design, I remember the first IPCC report coming out um, back early 90s, right? And clinging on. And I remember being at the library of Art Center and wondering, is that having an impact on my professional career? I didn't have the answer. It was just a question I absolutely remember to that day. And then it was 2000, fast moving forward, 2015, when I wrote my first article for a print packaging magazine on circularity. And the reason was because I read about it myself. And what resonated deeply with me is the fact that I'm a scuba diver, in as a hobby, and the topic of Ellen MacArthur back in the early 2010ish, about sailing in a boat, completely resonated with me as well when you go diving, because you only have that much air with you, and there's nothing you can add to it when you're down there. And that is very similar to this finite resource we have on the planet. So you definitely have to plan for it, and to recharge it. And this is the part that we're missing, obviously. And this is why at that moment, it really got stuck with me. How did I ever not think about that? It's so logical.
Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful. I think that's the first comparison to diving, to circular economy, that I've heard, and I'm also working in this space, so I've heard a couple of these explanations on why circularity is important and what is circularity. But I think this diving one is definitely a very clear one that describes the situation. So you already said it. So one of your very or areas that you're active in is circular economy, is circularity in as part of the circular economy, of course, and also because we're in Plastic Climate Future, right? We will be interesting to talk about, its potentials from your perspective to address plastic and climate crisis. But I think first, one more question. So, what are you doing in Hamburg? You have a company.
Yes.
What's your focus on, and who are you working with?
So I do run a company called Indeed Innovation, and we are a global design and innovation firm, helping companies to develop services, products, actually systems that cater to the circular economy. So very niche if you think about it, right? Because this is what we're focusing on, to make products, systems, experience for that matter, to go around in loops all the time. And we are located, the headquarters in Hamburg, but we have two additional branches. One is in Brooklyn, New York, and the other one is in Shanghai, in China. The reason for being that we just think that the value streams that we have right now, the manufacturing economies, are going from east to west. And therefore, these are the three hotspots. Of course, in the future, we should think about, of course, India, African continent, eventually South America. But these three areas of Europe, where lots of legislation is happening and regulatories, the United States, but the birth of most of the products we consume and do not rotate and loop is starting off China. And China is an amazing country for that matter, actually, not only culturally, but also I believe, they're going to be trailblazing in circularity, because they have some key systems in place.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I was just listening the other day, and I think it's pretty known out there in the media about China is leading the way with all kinds of renewable energy projects and so on. And I've not been to China in my rather long lifetime, but I'd like to get there someday to see it myself, see what it's like. A question. We at Plastic Climate Future, we talk a lot about, we use the word a lot, innovation. And of course, in your website, which I encourage all the listeners to go to this, indeed-innovation.com. Is fascinating. I was looking at that earlier, and it's just something to dive deeper into. And what intrigued me was you don't just stop at saying we need to innovate. You start by saying that we have a problem with innovation, that we need to do something about how we innovate, why we're doing it. Can you tell me a little bit what you mean by that? Because innovation is a word that's kind of almost like a sacred word in our lives, and for engineers and scientists. and to come out and say that we need to do something about this. I agree with you, but I'd like to hear what you say about that.
Yes, I mean it's of course a little bit of a provocation that I say
Yes.
that we need to rebel innovation. We need to almost like innovate innovation. The word itself, of course, is not wrong, but how we do it for the last
Mhm.
probably 30, 40, 50 years, especially I would say in everything that has to do with consumable products and things like that,
Mhm.
it's just not helping us going further. And I give you an example. I was just last week, I was at the world's largest printing printing packaging industry fair in Germany, right? So they're mostly
Mhm.
for their printing machines and stuff like that. And there was also a great panel on, plastics in the packaging industry and how to deal with it. Flexible plastics mostly, but I think it works for all of them. And I raised a question once the panel was closing in and opening to the audience. Um, I asked him, "Hey guys, I listened to you, and it sounds all great that you're talking about innovation, and we have to move forward. But two things. First of all, there's a growing plastic gap, and the second is that if we look at your strategies, I do not see any answer on how you guys in your industry want to become CO2 neutral, net zero by 2050. There's no means, nothing that shows a trajectory. And this is what I mean. It's kind of the typical rebound effect. We think that we're going to go for it, and most excuses are, well, but you know what? We are super important because of us, because of our plastics, we're having less food waste. And I'm not bashing on plastics by default. It's really about the ignorance, saying like, yeah, we're going to continue like that, and by accident there will be some magic thing happening that's going to resolve all the things. We know scientifically the issues we have, and we have to deal something about it, right? And I give you immediately, because otherwise it sounds like, again, bashing, and that this is not what I want to do. I want to really put out all the options and transparently and honestly discuss them. For example, let's say chemical recycling. Let's jump directly to one of those big holy grails that people think of, which is great theoretically, right? First of all, and it potentially could be also practically. The question is first, where do we get the energy from it, right? And that's not a provocation. It's just a simple question that we have to answer. And right now it's going to be difficult, maybe in the future less difficult. I think from a cost perspective and infrastructure perspective, to immediately jump to the guns here, which might be more interesting for the listeners as well, instead of repeating everything from ground again and explaining what the circular economy is actually. But if you think about it, only if I believe, if we have a state-owned infrastructure, like we do with water or electricity grid, right, which always comes first by the governments, then we have a chance to roll it out in big scale and really start honing in and closing on certain aspects of the plastic gaps. But if we just think, oh yeah, we just add on technology, what that showed us in the last 50 to 100 years is the classical rebound effect. And we're not going to get away with it if we are not putting the finger in the wounds and really say, this cannot work in the next decade or 20 decades.
John,
I
I
hope I
see
didn't
you're
spoil the party
smiling.
here.
What's
No,
that?
I see John is smiling because you just mentioned
Yep.
also, well, maybe not by accident, but one very
Okay.
important topic that we also always talk about, and that we also debate from different perspectives, because we
Mhm.
talk to material innovators from the bioeconomy space, we talk to mechanical recyclers, we also talk to companies that work with new technologies that drive this chemical recycling forward. And it just happens that John is very passionate about this topic as well.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know, Carl, if you know this. This is going to be a great conversation because I like what you said in your letter, where you're from Switzerland and you're easygoing, you're diplomatic, but you're always ready for a good controversial discussion. I like that because as long as people are engaging in good faith and have actually the same goal at the end of the day, this is how we make progress. And so I think this is great. I mean, I've just spent the last 3 years of part of my career the part where I get paid money is as Secretary General of Chemical Recycling Europe. I don't know if you know that or not,
I
I'd
did not
really,
know.
really like. Yeah, I'd really be interested to go into this with you further because I know exactly what you're saying. Indeed, and where I kind of landed on that at a certain point in time, and it's like reading a book, and it's where the bookmark is now, and the book continues to be read by me in a sense. Is the I started saying this not just as something to say, but it kind of came to me as something that really I kind of sit on today, and that is it's a very pragmatic. Where are we today, and versus what can we do today? And I'd like to hear more about where you talking about the rebound. But what I'm thinking about today is what the quote, which is originally from a Italian proverb that was quoted by Voltaire, the French philosopher, mathematician, and I can't remember how to say it in Italian, but it goes in English like perfect. Don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. And so, very pragmatic words of wisdom there that I kind of use to make peace with the reality of where we are today, what options are out there today, and when you consider the challenge of plastic waste, and indeed we cannot recycle our way out of this problem. But I'm sitting here looking at where we are today, the scale of the problem, and just pragmatically the fact that everything that we're saying in the world of plastics about bioplastics, about reduce, reuse, and then recycle, all of this being said, it just keeps on growing and growing and growing anyway. And so the question is, what can we do today, even if it's in some cases incremental? So that's where I am philosophically, anyway, on chemical recycling. But it's not about me. I want to get away from that right now, and we can come back to this later. But I think that's a really good point of discussion at some point.
Well, I mean, John, let me put that also on a spot. I mean, we shouldn't forget the date that we're talking today. I hope it's okay if we say that it's just a day after European Parliament elections, right?
Absolutely.
And this is quite devastating. I talked already this today to quite a few of my friends internationally.
Mm-hmm.
That are all working in the environment or sustainability space, and the question is really, where do we go from here?
Mm-hmm.
I think overall, especially the developed world, is at a point of time when we are transitioning from a certain period of history to another one, and this is always painful, and we're so much clinging to the past because we know what the past was like the last 50 years, and it was good for most of us living in the United States or in Europe, even in China. If you think back to the last 20 years of growth.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just obvious that why should we change that for something that is so completely unknown? And this is so much about the actual innovation, but not the innovation how we used to do it, which is usually more of an optimization and foregoing in a narrative that we know, again, coming back to the diving experience, we know we are running out of air. So don't come and tell me, oh, we could go at a different depth, or we could, maybe look at different fish or something like that. Gosh, this is not going to save us. Literally not. And I don't want to be over polemic or pathetic or whatever. It's just, let's use the math for that. If we have more people joining and economic growth of wealth and things like that, which we all want, right? I mean, why should people in the sub-Sahara zone not have the same wealth as we have? Well, and if we continue to tell them, hey, your supermarkets need to be full of ketchup bottles of 10 different brands, every day, second time of the day, at any date within a year. And that's just an example. Then I wonder, have we actually understood what is at stake and what is the solution space? And it's not about going to revoke all consumerism, but I try to go back and say, like, okay, what are you actually trying to go for? What is an ideal future, a desirable future for everyone? And this is where we have to get a consensus in, because then we can move backward and say, like, okay, going from today to this tomorrow, for example, in plastic use, which we all know plastics are great. And if we want to live a decent life, it's going to be not only very hard, we don't even need to, revoke on plastics, but we definitely have to change how and what type of plastics and how and for what we are using it. And I give you serious an example. This is what I lately always say to people. Going back to the ketchup, I love ketchup. It's great. I do it myself, but I also buy it. But the question is, why do you need shelves over shelves of ketchup bottles of, again, 5 to 10 different brands in a supermarket? What is the purpose for? Tell me what it is. Is it to be able that you can always buy it? You imagine you could only buy ketchup on Wednesday, and imagine there were only 3 brands. That would really help us. Would that be bad for the economy? No. Why? Because we would have less scattered, inefficient economic systems, less inefficient manufacturing, less waste and stuff like that. So why should that be bad? Yes, it would mean that not every kid could develop a new ketchup formula and become rich. Yes. And is that a problem? I would say no. People think that's freedom, but actually, sorry for elongating this, but usually, it's not from Voltaire, but the freedom of the others stop at the point where you are actually invading them. Okay.
Well, I think
Right.
you already now disclosed your love to philosophy through this last statements, and I very much like it. I must say, I come actually from originally from Poland, and I used to live in Poland during the communistic times when I was a child, and I remember there was just one ketchup, there was just one mayonnaise. And there was sometimes there was Coca-Cola, but not Pepsi, or there was either Pepsi or Coca-Cola. You couldn't get both. But I think, or that's the question actually for you also. Seeing that, I mean, isn't this an attitude that has to be? It's not so much an economical problem, but it's rather also a mindset. The mindset of the people that has to change. And what do you think is the role of education that yeah, and how can it drive actually also the shift of a mindset that in the end will follow also the economic consequence, or will have economic consequences, because if no one buys like all the different ketchups, then there won't be also an economic use case for that.
And this is great, Mateusz. This is going back to the topic of innovation. True innovation is not necessarily a technicality. It can be, but it's usually to actually shift ecosystems. That is, for me, what innovation in the 21st century should be about. Why? Because it's not that we need 1 more or 2 less ketchup bottles. It's definitely not that we need more innovation in technical plastics. Okay. It's because that won't solve the recycling part, right? It would solve, for example, if we would say all hospital equipment coming in from the 20 different brands would have exactly the same plastic property, ingredients, chemical structure, because that would make then at the end of the cycle recycling much easier, right? Wouldn't that, John? Right? I mean, this would make it easier.
Yeah.
And if you go and people, of course, would completely oppose. I mean, business owners of plastic ingredient companies, chemical companies, they would oppose that because they want to differentiate, because you want to have as many differentiating companies out there. And this is all about systems. Do we really need that? And of course, if we boil it down and say like, hey, Mateusz or John, you're going to lose your job if Karel is going to be president of the world, well, then it's not going to happen. But if I tell you, I have a different recipe, I tell you what you want is decent work, decent life. And if I could show you a world that everyone would live at peace, in the entire planet, and we all would have abundance of everything, I mean, that you need, not that you artificially crave because of advertising, and I could show that to you, maybe there's a chance. And this is the behavioral change. We first have to also change property systems. And I this is not coming from me intrinsically, but I don't know if you ever heard of Simon Michaud. He's an Australian, I think, geologist working for the Finnish government. Amazing guy, and he has introduced a concept and wrote a very extensive research paper on the resource balanced economy. And he basically says that what if we had all materials in the world, everything that is still unearthed, what is in maybe urban mines, so everything, if we had a map and an atlas basically of all these materials, and we would know every single gram of every raw rare earth, of critical minerals and so forth. We would all map it, and we would say, hey, you know what, it belongs to anyone on the planet. And that we then put a democratic system. Imagine we'll put a democratic system behind it that says, like, hey, we're going to manufacture the stuff that we need to make your best life possible, not 20 ketchup bottles, but whatever you need. If that means out of plastic, medical equipment that makes everyone on the planet live longer, then that's the deal we're going to go for, right? But we're going to do it in a way that we can recuperate all of these, because this is what we have to do. We have non-renewable renewable materials on the planet, and we have renewables. And if we want to also in 10 generations be able to use value of the non-renewables, we have to make sure that we keep them somehow in loop, right? And we have to design everything for it, for the leakage and all the stuff that we have. And this is where it also a little bit closes into chemical recycling, because my question would also be, how much leakage do we have? How much have we really designed the systems, again, ecosystems innovation, in order that we have the least leakage, so that it gives us basically the air, almost indefinite air, for an almost indefinite life on Earth.
But
Does
then you're
that somehow,
saying, yeah, then you're saying it's actually a design question. Or design plays a, like, on one hand, it's a question of how do we actually price our raw materials, and where do we set, the price tag? Does it start, at mining, or is it also including the end of life costs, but really not of the product, but really of the resource, of the material, and then also a design question.
and I think everything is, so let me start from that. Again, another very smart guy, unfortunately he died a couple of years ago, Milton Glaser, was a US American trailblazer in mostly graphical design, I have to say though, but he had, for me, the most favorable definition of what design is. Design is going from an existing condition. Design is the process going from an existing condition to a preferable one or preferred one. And this is this, and he also said, please make sure that there is no art involved in it. It's not about art. It's really about this transformation going from an existing condition to a preferred one. And the question is, what is the preferred condition? And you know what? When we talk about economics, this is the question. Who the heck said we need economics for that world I just described, right? But what you need is democracy. Democracy that the majority says, for example, if the earth quakes in Turkey and kills 250,000 people, then we would, instead of producing more cars, I'm making a really bad example here, but just to exemplify it, instead of making more cars for German people, Mercedes-Benz, we would use the steel to actually rebuild part of Turkey. That would be fair and just in a world. So it's not about money. It's about where do we actually need the resource to balance life. And this is where I want to get at, because otherwise it is completely unfair. And otherwise we're going to continue, sorry for the political message here, but to continue to have wars, because, we need about, and there's another very famous and super smart person, Olivier Lazare, a French geologist, she said that we need about 300 to 500 more mines on the planet in the next 20 to 30 years, just for the energy transition, going from a fossil to a renewable energy one. Why? Because, suddenly windmills needs critical materials, leads material, instead of nuclear plants and burning coal and fossil fuel, right? Stuff like that. Solar panels, all these stuff. And this is, where is it going to happen? It's not going to happen in the back of your, neither in any country of Europe it's going to happen. So it's probably going to happen somewhere else where people can be dirty and stuff like that. But this is going to kill the atmosphere even more so. And especially someone will have to put their fingers on it. And that usually happens either through, weird political systems, let's put it that way, or through war. Been there, done that, right? I mean, we know that story. So this is why we need to rebel this innovation spirit, because the old rebel innovation spirit just is not working out if we're going to continue.
Wow, I tell you what, this is a good one. This is a really good one. I love this. I love this. Oh, what do you think about, since you mentioned earlier, indeed, that they had the European elections yesterday. Um, what are your hopes and concerns about where we were last week versus where we're headed now? Um, are you concerned that we will be politically taking a turn further away from looking at the issue of circularity, looking at the issue of finite resources, less concerned about the oxygen in the diving tank? I mean, what is your thinking about this? Are you more concerned than you were last week?
Of course. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. But it started already, everywhere when you have a catastrophe, politicians, what they
Mm-hmm.
like to do, because it's very true. It's easy fix, has nothing to do with systems. Systems
Mm-hmm.
seems to be so complicated, but everyone, if you start to think about it, everyone knows that in every day, when you drink too much, you get a headache, and that usually comes an hour or two later. So it's a system, your body, a fluid system that it is at stake, and it's not a different thing. Anyway, political problem is that when we had the flooding just throughout Europe, what they come up, instead of looking at the root cause, you go like, well, we need to have a different type of insurance, as if
Mm-hmm.
the insurance would solve that. It will just ease the pain that the people have, and therefore might cater some votes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that specifically CSRD, for example, in Europe, I
Mm-hmm.
wonder what's going to happen with that, if they're going to halt that, or just ease it in, because that's a serious um, pain point for companies right now, the larger companies. So that could be, which wouldn't change anything. It's literally not, but it's just to tell the audience, the regular people, hey, we're doing something to ease it, because this is not going to change the economic situation we're having. The economic situation we're having in Europe, throughout the world, even in China, to feel in China, is that we're getting to the limits. As the Club of Rome and Donatella Meadow back in 1970, was propagating and foreseeing. And this is, of course, this is again coming back to we are at this fringe time, at this time period where we're going to transition from one time period to another one. That's not going to go from one day to the other one. It's going to be maybe a decade, or maybe even more, that we're really going to feel the pain more and more. So I think for the next 5 years, oops, it's going to be a tough time if you're going to be into sustainability and circularity.
Mm-hmm.
So that's maybe also one of the reasons why you're not only focusing solely on circularity, but what I was fascinated with is that when people look you up on the internet, there they will definitely find also the connection to AI. And we've had actually already someone, a famous innovator, also John Besant, on the podcast, and we also asked him right after ChatGPT actually came out, like how he sees AI as a driver or maybe inhibitor of innovation. And I won't ask you the same question, but I will just slightly modify it, because you just mentioned Telemedo systems thinking, and circular economy is all about systemic change, which has a lot of parameters, which is a multivariable solution space. So it's very difficult to think linearly and try to find circular solutions. So you definitely need some help from at least software. And now at the topic of AI. So first of all, why are you concerned with AI? So what brought you there to work with artificial intelligence and these concepts? And how do you see artificial intelligence supporting the transition to a more sustainable economy?
So first of all, I've been working at the brink of software algorithm and the capacity, the really big capacity it entails, probably already 20 years and longer. Just because when I was working in the United States, I worked for a company that was transforming military technology to consumer good technologies, and that's already where you had like you've got a glimpse of what the future could entail in certain aspects, and we were really driven to think broad and deep and wide, and especially in the last, I would say, 7 years. I've been really deep diving because there was a new advent of the technological capacity to computing power, mostly. You know, if you think of quantum computing and things like that. I wrote a book together with two colleagues called the AI Tool Book, with the purpose to actually help. In 2020, we wrote that to help people, anyone actually, to think about solutions with AI, because I do believe that for systems, for super complex topics, it's the way to go forward, because we humans are super biased. By the way, it doesn't mean that not only algorithm or deep learning systems can be biased, but it's just about that we have just, even in a team, it's going to be super hard for us to move forward. Going forward to circularity, because it's a systems thing. And if you think about the resource balance economy, an economy, by the way, that is in constant hibernation rather than in going up, and then, drop down harshly and then go up again, that is somehow a continuation. You need, again, to shift and have these material flows going from one place to the other, to distribute it, because we will always have incidents, as I said, the earthquake before the example, where we need it. So this is going from smaller things. If you think about that you are a manufacturer of some things, and you want to get material flows back, you know that you usually don't get it back yourself. You can't go to the incineration or the recycling plant and say, like, can I please get my yogurt cups back? That won't work if you're a dairy company. So, you have to think in larger ecosystems. You have to work with other data streams together to maybe use the potential there. And this is where I think the data streams and the data quantity and quality we're generating, and this is, by the way, why we're doing exercises like CSRD and stuff like that, to build a platform, the prerequisite to be capable of putting AI to work. And this is so for me, there's no second question. If we don't tap into that massively, by the way, we're of course already all doing it, then we're again not getting the point of that part of the technology.
Mm.
It's we talked now about technology as one important aspect. You also disclosed a bit of your philosophical let's say touch, and also the interest in philosophy. So let's say we have the technology, let's say we have the capability through AI to innovate better, to innovate on a really systems level. How about the human element? How can we also encourage, and also but when we talked about the elections, but how can we also have a mindset that, because we probably need everyone on board, or at least the majority, to then also adopt new technologies, new solutions. So how do you see the human element in this? Is this something that is rather top down, or is it something that has to be integrated bottom up?
I mean, let me first make one remark on AI and human topics. I mean, we have the aspect of responsible AI, ethics in any type of technology, but foremostly right now in AI is, of course, a huge issue, because if you think about that, we're doing a second wave or a third wave, if you want to, of colonialism, because we're buying the stuff, the codes and the data sets from cheap labor in other parts of the world, which is by itself weird. And at the same time, if we think of how much we, for example, use the resources, human capital or human resources on the African continents, for AI, ChatGPT and others, African languages do not exist. Out of the 30 languages that exist on the internet, basically none of them, or that are represented in AI, none of them come from the African continent. So this is a dilemma by itself. But let's put that for the moment. Sorry for that, because the show is about circularity,
No, I think
sustainable
it's important.
packaging, and
Yeah.
plastics. But it's huge. But let's keep that in mind. But for right now, look at the topic it can actually entail and has to move forward with. The human part that I envision, and this is again going more for outcome than for an intermediate. So what is a desirable future for us? And I do, for example, I give you what it is not. It cannot be repetitive tasks that we have been doing, be it on a factory line or at a bank as a clerk, right? Where we shoved one pile of paper from the left to the right, morning left, evening on the right side. This has never been our forte as humans, I would say. We've just been abused. And so has been the school system. If you go like back a couple of 100 years, students didn't get grades. You either passed math or you didn't, because either you got it or you didn't. And we quantified it so that we could stream that into the economy we have prepared, which was quite segmented. But if we move beyond that, I foresee a life for everyone that is much more about what we are really about, because we are super biased, right? So it's more about the arts, it's about culture, it's about self-expression. It's, for example, also if you like food, I think in a circular economy, in a really good circular economy, we're going to be spending more time about growing food, about preparing food, that is a little bit going back in time. But isn't that great? I mean, right now we work so hard to then get food from a restaurant or go to a place where we can eat. So, yes, can work, but should you do shitty bank work to then, that eventually gets killed anyway by AI, to then go to a restaurant? Why don't you grow it yourself? Have go fishing. I don't know. Have the time of your life. Nobody said we have to work our butt off.
Or go diving.
Yes. Look at the wonders of nature and
Yeah.
just enjoy it. Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Well,
I,
there is
Go
this
ahead.
story. I don't. I hope I recall it correctly, but I don't remember where I got it from. I think it's from the 4 Hour Work Week from Tim Ferriss, from the book. But I think I've read it also in other contexts. So it's about this fisherman who lives in Mexico, and there is a banker from New York having his holidays and spending them at the beach, and then the fisherman comes from his fishing, from his evening fishing, and then brings 2 fish back, and then the banker asks him like, yeah, do you get them every day? Yeah, of course, no problem. And if so the banker tells him like, you know what, why don't you just buy another boat, and then you can get more fish, and then you can sell it, and then you can earn some money and buy more boats, and finally you don't have to work, but you can live in New York, and then you can have a whole fleet, and manage a lot of many fisher boats and make lots of money. And then the fisherman asks him, and then what? I will have to come here on holidays for 2 weeks? No, I won't do that.
In the end, it's all about narratives and storytelling,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's so obvious, but this is poor people in the States that only get 2 weeks of vacation. If you compare that to
yeah,
Europe, right? I mean,
yeah,
Mm,
what for?
yeah. Indeed. 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 Oh, yeah. I'm just sitting here trying to think of something clever to say here, but it's not so easy. No, I mean, just coming back to innovation, and coming back to the human element. So, kind of threading these two together. Um, I mean, if how what we're talking about here today, tonight, um, how can the average, let's say the average Joe, the average guy, uh, possibly glean something from what we're talking about tonight and put it into some type of practice. Um, I myself find myself back in when I was really deep into chemical recycling with the association, thinking that everyone around me knows about chemical recycling, and finding out that that was just not the case. Um, I mean, how can the average person maybe learn something from what we're talking about, or what we're listening to, what you're talking about, and apply it in a way that is adding to uh, a solution to the challenges that we have. I think that so many people, including myself, in some ways, um, we get caught up in just the daily routines, and I mean, I try myself to reduce, to reuse when it comes to plastic, but I find myself also succumbing to the convenience of everything and just saying, well, okay, I do a little bit here and there, but I mean, any thoughts on how we could
Yeah.
apply, how the average person, the average Joe, could really maybe some change here and there make a step in the right direction?
That's a really amazing and important question, and I probably don't have the answer to it, but I have some reflections to it. First of all,
Mm-hmm.
it's of course starts that, how can we infuse those people with new thoughts, new thinking, and I think it goes back to narrative. So I wish in Hollywood, in on Netflix and others, we could in the media throughout, we could have different narratives that give, because I believe today for the masses, and this shows at the poll, there is no alternative vision, no alternative desirable future narrative that they go like, oh yes, that's striving. That I want to get that. Can I please have one of that? Of that future. We don't have it. So but let's for a second leave that aside, because again, it's a systems topic. I think we that are maybe more thinking about that, we that are working in companies or startups or whatever corporate environments, I think it's also a little bit on us that we can help the majority of the planetarian people,
Mm-hmm.
by looking at three things. And this is again not coming from myself, but a really amazing friend of mine, Renee Lertzman, who is a U.S. climate psychologist, um, is pinpointing the three aspects of humans that we have, we should acknowledge, which is the anxiety that people have. I mean, everyone, of course, is afraid when we read about the flooding. Everyone is afraid when we read about the bad news in media, right? And then there's the second one, which is probably the most difficult one. That's the ambiguity, right? We all are kind of torn in between, oh, I heard I shouldn't eat red meat anymore because it's causing more CO2, whatever, and on the other hand, I want to fly somewhere because I want to see the world, right? But that's considered to be bad either. So how do I, this is your behavioral aspects of convenience and things like that. Super, super hard. And the third part that we need to deal with in a very honest way, not in an educational or top-down whatever way, but we have to solve it for the people, is the ambition, because everyone wants to be part of the solution. No one wants to be part of the problem, right? And I give you an example that I like that has to do with plastic that you're going to crave probably. There's a startup in Germany that is doing this typical, food containers out of restaurant eating, the stuff that you get when you order food, whatever it is. And that's a huge plastic problem if you think about it, because usually the stuff you get is very for a super short time, and it's usually a lot of very valuable material because it needs food grade safety, or food grade, right, and all that topics. It needs to hold the heat and all that stuff, but for what? It's only going to be 10 minutes, 15 minutes, then it's going to be thrown away. So that's really bad if you think. So what they did, like all these recups and stuff like that, but they went beyond. They looked at the system from all aspects, from a B2B, but also from a B2C part. So I give you two examples what I think that they solved really well. First of all, usually as a consumer, if you go there and the restaurant tells you, hey, you can have the reuse type of a thing, right? They say, like, well, but you have to pay me a deposit. And they solved that by saying, hey, don't worry, no deposit necessary. Okay, so that's already the first thing you go, okay, you're not giving me pain. You're not putting to my anxiety that I'm not going to get the money back, nor are you going for my ambiguity. Oh, should I? It's no question. Gosh, he gives me that super cool Tupperware stuff for free. I mean, there's a small hook behind it, but it's not a paywall. It's behind. So that's the first barrier you break down. This is what we have to help other customers to make it easy to be part of the solution. Okay. Now the second part is, the funny thing is, they are not buying those containers from a manufacturer. They involve the manufacturer into their business case, meaning they say, hey, we're not going to buy it from you. We're not going to give you $5 for a plate or whatever it will cost, right? What we're going to do is like, hey, we're going to give you access to our system, and you're going to get paid for every cycle that plate or whatever thing that cup is going to take, and eventually you can make more money with it first, okay? Because if we are all successful, you're going to make more money than if you just sold it one time. Hello, circularity. And the second part is, which I like as well, is, hey, eventually you're going to get it back once it's overused, end of life, and you know exactly what you got in the material, so you can really recycle it perfectly. Okay, so if you think about that ecosystem right there, it makes it for everyone being part of a win-win situation.
That's fascinating. I think one of the keys to that is the point you made about it's to the consumer, to the customer, the individual, making it well. Here's a utensil or a plate that you don't pay a deposit on. You reuse it, and you encourage them to bring it back and put it in a cycle. I think that's probably the big key there.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Everywhere you have to make the barriers, you have to break them down, and this is system 3 thinking, right? It's not just one puzzle piece. You really have to go to the root cause of the problem. And really, I mean, this is what you said, Mateusz, right? It's a design topic. And Apple, when they got so successful with their products because they really tried to solve everything. Not like Microsoft that only solved 20% of it. And that's the difficult part. But then that's when you really have an innovation, because you're really going to scale. You innovate the system. I just love that if you do that, because this is how we can get change, right? I mean, look at Dalai Lama when he has his proposition. If you think of Mahatma Gandhi, if you think of all the people, Martin Luther King, they did it all. They just didn't say like Trump, well, I'm going to give you more oil drilling capacity.
If you give me $1 billion for my campaign,
anything you want.
Okay, we take that out.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And I like this example. I would even go further, because the example touches on a B2C ecosystem. But I think now, from my experience with the industry, I think what hinders scalability of circular economy solutions is also in the B2B sector, the lack of ecosystem innovation, because that's something that we could solve by providing the right infrastructure. And maybe you mentioned it in the beginning, having like state-owned certain parts of the value chain that could be now extended onto material flows, resource flows. I think that's some of these ideas that I got from this, and this would lead me to one, but not the last one, but one more question is like, how do you see like the future now? So if you would be from today, like saying, okay, I had one wish or two wishes, what would it be to drive it?
So, I talked throughout the last, 15 minutes a lot about also a far-fetched future. I tell you one very simple thing I would wish for that would move the circularity needle above and beyond. We have to kill added value tax for circular products. Anything that is within circularity, has to be relieved from the added value tax, because the added value tax is actually a tax that kills circularity. It's a linear economy tax, and we have to stop that. And by the way, if we would stop it, the state would not get less taxes. No one would have to. It just would immediately make any business model that relies on circular, material input. It would enable it to be improved by, in Spain by 21%, in Germany by 19%, whatever added value tax you have in your country. Boom, right there.
Yeah. Great. I think that's a nice, I would say, not ending statement, because I must say, Karel, we will have to invite you for a second time. There is still a lot more things to discuss with you, and we definitely won't let you go before our last question. And I think I give this one to John.
Oh yeah, I mean, indeed, I don't want to let you go. I wish we could talk for another 2 hours. And indeed, if you have the time, or if you'll take the time in the future, we'll do this again and pick up on this, because I know that I'm learning a lot here. I think Matt is too. Yeah, this is what Plastic Climate Future is all about. So thank you, Carl. Seriously, thank you for this.
You're welcome. And I'm even so more scared about the last question.
Yeah, well, the last question is, this is where we're going to learn all we need to know about you, sir. And that is the most important question of all. Me and Matt, we both really love music, and Matt flatters me by including him in with him by saying we're both play guitar and musicians. He plays guitar. I just scare people away when I pick up my guitar. I scare them away. If I start singing, then they really run away. But we both love music. And when we began Plastic Climate Future, we started a playlist. And at the end of every one of our podcasts, we asked our guests to give us a song or two that they like, that they find inspiring. It can apply to the topic. It can be totally something unrelated, but just a song that they like, or something to get us to think. So this is what we like to ask from you, Carl. A song or two that's close to you, close to your heart, close to your head, close to your mission, or whatever. But anything that would help us to remember you when we play this song again.
Wow, I have one, and it's are there actually accidents or coincidence? That's a really that's something I
that's
would.
Jungian, man. That's Jungian.
So mine would be from REM, Night Swimming.
Oh yeah,
Night Swimming deserves a quiet night.
Yes,
it's a beautiful song. I don't think people understand. I don't think. Oh, I love that. Oh wow, I love that song. I can play "Find the River." "Find the River" comes on after that, and I can play that on my guitar.
Oh wow,
cool. See,
wow, yeah, REM's one of my favorite of all time. Absolutely. All right, this is a good guy.
Yeah, thanks, Karel. I think this was really super inspiring. I really enjoyed also this connection and between the different disciplines, coming from industrial design, and then showing how important it is to also look beyond the borders of disciplines, especially with philosophy and AI. And I think this is where the future will go to lead us to us in terms of technology. So thanks a lot. For those of you who didn't get enough, you have a cool book also, and there's some cool videos on the internet that I was also already watching. So there is more of Karel, and there will be more hopefully in our future, and we will be happy to have you again.
Guys, Mateusz, John, it was a pleasure talking to you. The time just flew by, also for me. You guys are great, and love coming back. Not next week, but in a couple of months or a year.
We'll do it.
When I recharged all my insights, I can share with you guys.
Great.
All right. Awesome. This sounds great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All the best, yeah?
Thank you.